You train all the time. You train and you train and train. Actually, I was switched into the Fire Direction Center then, where I had to keep up with the guns and everything as to how they were, the coordinates that they would have on the guns. I had to keep up with that. We thought that when we heard where we were going and saw the island, mock-up of the island and everything, we thought maybe we would be there about 3 or 4 days and it would be over with. We thought it would be like it was in the Marshalls. Hurry up operation, but we didn't have a dream it would be what it was. I went over there and then I transferred to the LST. We were standing, we was watching them shell the island from the deck of the LST, and we pulled, the ship moved in closer, and I had looked at them, and then I just decided I would go down to the tank deck of the LST, and I don't know why, and about maybe a minute or less time than that, they put a shell up on the deck of the LST with the group of people I was standing with talking to. They were hit. They were having problems when the first waves went in. They were having problems, and we knew it. And then I think a second day out there, we were going to go in, and we had trained with ducks then, and the ducks, they put the howitzers in the ducks, the 105s, and the shells and everything, and they would bring them from the ship to the shore. Well, the sea out there was choppy and rough, and the ducks, a lot of them was sinking because of so much water and such rough seas. And when I went to boot camp, if you couldn't swim, you had to go. They made you go take swimming lessons every night until you could, and then that followed you. If you didn't learn how to swim then it had you up at other places, and they'd make you learn swimming lessons. And I wondered how come they made you take so much swimming. And when I was going into Iwo, I saw a duck and it went down, and they had a lieutenant up there, and I guess he didn't have the swimming lessons, and so he drowned, and when the duck sunk. And we went on up there, and we couldn't get into the beach at that time because there's so much boats and everything that were just up on the beach that were just, a lot of wreckage and everything. And so we went back and that next morning and tried to land again, which we did. We lost 2 of the guns that we had, and we only got landed and we only had 2 guns. So we went on up the beach and dug a foxhole, and the grounds, well, I guess you'd say the sand looked like coffee grounds or something like that. You couldn't dig much in it. When you tried to dig a foxhole, the sand would come in the sides, and it's hard to get a good foxhole. Anyway, we went up, got in there, and we dug that foxhole, and they set up 2 of the guns, and that was just before night, and then the Japanese began to shell us, and they shelled all night long, and I was in the foxhole, and the fire would come near us, come near to this ladder fire, and it'd get closer and closer and closer, and I hold my breath. It's what seemed like an hour, but it was just seconds. And then the shell would land in the other side of the foxhole, and it'd go on down the island for a while. And that went on all night long. They didn't let up, and I got up the next morning, and some of the people in the battery had been killed because the shells went in their foxholes with them. There was a lot of light. The machine guns and everything would go around us and be near us and everything, and that part didn't bother us as much as the artillery did. They had a cruiser out there that had a derrick on it, and they pulled a couple of guns off the bottom of the ocean, and then it sent them on in to us, and we got those, and we set up the artillery. I never realized how much they had. I know that they said that even the artillery shells and the 105s weren't penetrating the bunkers that they had, and they needed heavier shells and bigger shells than the 105 or the 155, that they were so well dug in that wasn't reaching them at all. It was, I don't know, everywhere on that island, there wasn't no place that was safe. It was just artillery fire everywhere, and small arms fire everywhere. The front lines weren't very far from where we were. As a matter of fact, when we first went in there, the forward observer was right next to the field piece that was at a cannon, and it was saying maybe the front lines was about 300, 200 yards ahead of him. Well, we got more people on the island, and we got more equipment on the island, and we began to shell and begin to take the island and begin to have more area where we could get there. I tell you, we were there when the flag was raised. You've seen that picture of that. That was in back of us. Our division went down one side of the island, and the other division went down the other side, and one division went up Suribachi, where that was where the flag was raised. I remember that morning when I could see the flag. Didn't see them pushing it up. I could see the flag though when it flew. And all of the ships out there around the island, when that flag went up, they blew the horns and everything. It was a moving thing. That was the third day, but we had about 28 more days of fighting before that was over. But that was a big push. They had tunnels all under the island. I mean, it was one place to the other. They could move it anywhere. You would close up one bunker, and they would come out over here, and then the next thing they'd be back over here where you closed it up. And it was a difficult thing to get rid of all of the people that were there. And they had a big rockets that they would shoot at us too, and you'd see those. The rockets would come over, and it looked like I don't know, it was just big, and you'd see them coming, and you'd wonder, well, where's that thing gonna land? They stayed in the caves. They didn't have any of those bonsais or attacks until the very end of the campaign. They just stayed in the caves and shot at you from the caves. I don't know. It always seemed like the new people always got killed. I don't know why, the replacements, but they're the ones that seem to have gotten killed more than that first night, that shelling that was that first night. They had two replacements who were killed that night, and I don't know why they always seem to be the ones that were the casualties. It was cold. It was before everywhere we'd been, it had been warm and you perspire and all that, but there it was very cold. And the Navy, the ships, they sent in all that long underwear and stuff like that for us to put on. But it was cold, it was wet, it rained a lot, and it was damp, and it was just kind of a miserable situation. Well, I guess about after we've been there about 21 or 22 days, it began to slack off, and it wasn't very much resistance. It was just a matter of cleaning out the last of the foxholes and all the bunkers that they were in. We left out in the afternoon, I remember that. I remember we went out to a merchant ship. I remember we were really beat, tired, and everything, and dirty. And we had to climb up the nets to get on the ship. And I remember when you climb up, you kind of climb up and you have to get on the deck of the ship. It's up about, on those transports, that's up about 20 feet. And the landing craft you're in is going up and down sometimes. And you have to get on that landing net when you're at the top of the roll of the ship that you're on, or the landing craft. And you have to grab on and then start up. And then when you get up to the top, then it's no rail or anything to grab onto. You got to kind of just get over on the flat surface on the ship. Well, we got out there, and usually the first, one or two people that go up the net, the sailors always help them out, get onto the ship, and then they help the people behind them. But we had on a merchant ship, we didn't get any help at all when we were climbing on board. And I remember they had ham and eggs and nice sit-down lunch, and we didn't have anything. I had 2 meals a day, and kind of just it wasn't very good food. And I remember them eating real nice food, sitting down at the table. Were kind of resentful, and I guess, and they were paid so much for every air raid they went through, and we didn't want any more air raids, and they were kind of hoping they would get an air raid, but we'd had all we wanted. We were ready to get out of there and get back. They had bunks and mattresses and things like that, and we were in those. They were bunks, and they were about 6 high, and it was about a foot in between the bunks where you slid in, and they were just a piece of canvas and the pipes around there, and the canvas is kind of tied to the pipes, and that's where we slept. I remember we had one water fountain on that ship, and we had to fill our canteens up at a certain time, and that's what we had to fill the canteens up with, and water, and that's what we drank out of, and had to keep those separately. It wasn't very pleasant trip, and of course our officers in our didn't have much say-so, whereas when we were on a Navy ship, at least the officers, had say-so with the Navy people, but they didn't have any say-so or couldn't influence those merchant marine people much. We're supposed to go back to Saipan to a rest area, but the division was depleted, and we lost so many people that they just said we would take us back to Maui. They had a big celebration there for us. They called us the Maui Marines, and they had a big celebration. But what we actually did, we came back and we started training again, and we were supposed to go into Japan and spearhead that operation there.